Okay, welcome to my presentation about message handling library. So actually, what we had before is this. In admin web apps, we had a message mapping service, JSX file. Actually, what I did is I moved this service into a new library. So we now have a common functionality for any project. For now, we use this library in admin web apps and admin billing. This is how it did look before. We had get message function which received two parameters, data and translation data. So data is a response from server, what we get actually from server when we make HTTP request. And the translation data, it is something that is constructed, for instance, in admin web apps to provide additional data in case of success or failure. So that data can contain some interpolations and so on. So this is the old code and it is removed, and what we have now is this. This is SWIA API calls handling library, and it has a get message map function. Now it receives 4 parameters. As you can see, the last 3 are optional, and just first is required. It is data. That's what we have as a response from the server, and I will explain now what all of these parameters mean. So the second parameter is the same as before, some additional callbacks or interpolations or something like that. I will say more about it later. Mappings and translations are new parameters, and in this library I've implemented the translation mechanism. So this library is agnostic of translation mechanism of its consumer. So if we use this library in admin web apps, admin web apps has its own translation mechanism, but this library doesn't care for that. Because admin web apps provides translations and mappings to this function. So what does it mean? I will show it later in admin web apps project. But for now, it's important that if we provide just data to this function, and that data has a status for 401 or 403, this function will return generic error. Actually, it will return a configuration for error model. So you can see in this file, for instance, we have defined two different configurations. These configurations is if we got 401 or 403 error status, and this is for other errors. As you can remember, our model in admin billing has header has some text and has OK button. So in this configuration, all of those model properties are covered, and we also have some streams that need to be translated. Their translations are placed in this file. So if you for some generic messages like this, we don't need to provide translations and mappings. So here these are mappings. We don't need to provide them from admin web apps, for instance, or from admin billing. We can just provide data, and if we call get message map with just this parameter, and in that case, if we got such error from server, this function will return correct configuration with these messages. For instance, we will get from this function header unable to complete request, then text this one, and this for confirmation button. For instance, in admin billing, just to show you how it works, in admin billing, I created this function as model config utils get model config for error. What it does is it calls get message map function and provides just error without any additional data, any additional translation, and so on. And it's important because in admin billing we don't have translation mechanism implemented. Later we will probably have it, but at this moment we don't have it. Okay, so I show you how this library returns some generic configuration for model. So this is actually default configuration, but if you want to overwrite something, for instance, if you don't want header to have this title, then you can provide translation for this property. For instance, it should be something like this in admin billing. Since the fourth parameter is translation, it should be something like this. And if you want, for instance, to keep other properties of model same as default ones, you will just provide this property. You will just overwrite this property and provide it as a property of this object. So that's it about some default themes in library. About how it is used in admin web apps, what we had before, I'm not sure. Do you have any questions?
Miroslav,
yeah.
I had a question. The data that we're passing, those the keys of that object, so the one that you just specified.
Sorry, data.
The default in the library, you had a map with a bunch of default translations.
Yeah.
The key of that map. This one. Any idea why it wasn't done something like these are always fixed, right? The default translation here, for example, internet IL8 G4 is always referring to the OK button, the text of the OK button.
Yeah.
Any idea why it wasn't named something like IL8 OK button text, for example, or?
Okay, the question is why is this okay and not some other text?
Not the value, the key, the G_4.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, we can replace that with some which what would be what would make more sense. I agree that this is not so descriptive. I for now just moved the existing mappings from admin web apps to this. So yeah, in the app we will need to know exact names of those properties and to override them. But we can consider to rename them.
Miroslav. So basically, Miroslav got these from Admin Web Apps. In Admin Web Apps, we were using this convention. G there refers to the global translations file, which is why it's in that format. But in this case, we can change the key.
Yeah.
It's just a convention we're using in AngularJS.
Because as Miroslav was saying, you have to actually locate this file, open it, see what keys it expects. I mean, you won't get them by heart.
For me, to be honest, is so from my experience in the translations, it's much better keeping it this way, as exactly as you said, Clayton. You will need to open the file, and I think you need to open the file because if we keep, for example, I18 and OK or button OK, first, are we sure it's OK? And second, if we say if it's a button underscore OK, then somebody would say, why should I use OK for that's used for a button in some other place? So if we are to rename it a bit more clear, I don't know, at least exclude component name.
In AngularJS, we had used this convention to allow us the flexibility through ildco to change the text. Because, for example, instead of OK, one day you might change it to OKAY, for example. It's just to allow the flexibility, because otherwise we might need to, if this is updated, should we update this one as well then? The key is just to avoid that mismatching them.
I understand having like a repository of strings, hard-coded strings or constants, whatever. But here in this scope, it looks like it's part of this map. That is always going to mean the OK button and the modal text, modal header.
But then what with the others that are not so precise?
But we're talking specifically about this, right? This map. This will always have like 5 values, and they will always be, one of them will be the OK text, the other will be the header. I don't know, just a suggestion was asking if kind of there was a valid reason not to go with the more human readable keys.
For me, it's valid reason to have it in a way, as Patrick said, that what if the value change? Do we change the key then as well?
We can take this discussion offline then.
Please don't include me. Joking.
For the last one, what would you do, for example? G underscore the right context.
Okay, any more question related to this part of presentation? If no, I would go to admin web apps just to show you how it's used here, because admin web apps has its translation mechanism, and what we do have here is we have get mappings and get translation methods which just iterate through files. For instance, get mappings iterates through these two files which are located in this path. And how does it look? This file looks like something like this. So it's a mapping. We have some error codes, for instance, or success codes. We get it from server. And we have appropriate object related to those codes. In Sphere API calls handling, this is the line when we get this enum. So enum can be provided in this parameter, or it can be just got from the server as data error code. So in admin web apps, we just collect all those mappings from this file and from this other one, and we do the same for translations. For instance, these are translations for cloud backup, and we have 3 files for translations. So in this function we are collecting them all, and in constructor of this REST API service, we just so collect all those data and putting them here, and we use this data in this call. So here we are providing all 4 parameters. So that's different from admin billing, but that's because admin web apps has its own translation mechanism. So what's changed in admin web apps as well? Interpolations. So I opened this pull request just to show you what are the changes. Earlier we had interpolation objects like this, and now we have it like this. Why I did that change? Because as I mentioned before, now translation is now we do translation in the library. So I didn't want to complicate things. This function in the library does that job, and you see just let me interpolations. So it iterates through interpolation object, and it replaces, you see double curly braces, so words or properties actually which are surrounded by double curly braces. Those are interpolations, and this function just replace them with their value. So if we provide something like this, when this function find in the string double curly braces, then support phone number and double curly braces closing, it will just replace it with this. So in the code, for instance, this it looks like this. Okay, so interpolations are changed, and that's basically the biggest change in the old code in admin web apps. So beside that, I'm not sure what else could I say. I think I said all important things related to this library, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Merge system. Yes, yes.
So we can do on the temporary thing. There's one of the examples that
The ones we had in admin web apps already, Miroslav basically refactored those. So
we can have a look at.
sure.
Sorry, Patrick, we don't hear the question.
So Michaela was asking whether this is already merged and whether the existing translations we had in admin web apps, whether they were refactored or not. So
I
basically,
have the same question for the BNB actually.
Okay, so translations, yeah, actually one change I did in translation is related to effective translation date. That's what I forgot to do, to say actually, because effective translation date had a pipe. Actually, we use the moment.js in admin web apps, and one of these streams had a message for effective translation date, and it contained moment.js format, and it didn't work with the new library. So what I did is actually like this. Oops. Wrong bracket. I cannot remember in which file that was.
customer storage, something controller.
Sorry.
Customer storage, I believe. Customer storage, that's one, I believe. The first
Pricing
one.
control. Okay. What I did is I instead of keeping that format pipe in string, I just programmatically did format and provide the formatted date in to library. But I will find it that request.
Actually, I think it's in cloud backup service in the service.
But okay, thanks. Actually, sorry. But yeah, this is that pull request. Yeah. Yeah, cloud backup service. So that's moment. You see here we have this, and what I removed is here. We had this, and that was problem because library just works with things like this. It does not accept any pipes or anything similar to that. So that's the only change related to translations.
Here, just a question to clear out. So this is introduced to the BMB side of the PNCP, but is it propagated to all the API calls, or that's something that should be tackled as a technical task in separate stories?
I'm not sure what you mean related to BMB.
Maybe I missed that part, but so basically, if we had API call that can fail, is that already addressed with the library?
Yeah, but for now we just have since we don't have translations in BMB and so on, and for now we are just showing generic models. So like we had before, that didn't change. So for any error response from the server, at this moment we just show model with this configuration.
That's the one. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we have translated it in this file. So if I just call get message map with error, does this, the library will return me that configuration for model. And Marco will do on some tasks where those messages will be customized. So he will provide additional parameters here.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
What Marco will be doing is, since we were waiting for this framework to be ready, we had created specific stories. For example, when C8 tried to create a contract and it failed, we had created stories for that, and we made them blocked by this task of the framework. So we had specific stories, Marian, to tackle the individual dialogues which we had with custom text in them. Instead of implementing them and then revising them when the framework is to put them blocked, and we'll be revisiting them.
Is that something that you plan for MVP? I'm sorry, I'm not in a loop about that.
No, it's just custom pricing. The stories of custom pricing, okay. Like that. I don't know how you did for the other functionality. So that we don't lose track of them, we kept kind of track of them, like this is blocked because of the framework. When the framework gets unblocked, we'll revise these stories. So we have a list of them, the stories that need to be revised.
Thank you.
One question which I had for Miroslav is, Miroslav, so the framework, will it take care of actually showing the dialogue or just giving you the message map?
Framework returns configuration for model dialogue.
So if we are currently showing the dialogue and we're not using the framework, we need to replace our logic, whatever it is. If we want to use the framework, we need to replace it by calling the framework's get message map.
So from now we need to use that function for any success or error model dialog. Because in that function it processes data received from server, and it returns some model configuration. If you, for some cases, if you think that there is no sense for using that function, that's okay, but I'm not so familiar with projects to know are there such cases or not.
Then just to make sure I understood correctly, then showing the dialogue is still a responsibility of the project itself, so be it admin billing, admin web apps.
Yeah, sure. This function just returns configuration data for dialog, but showing is a responsibility of projects. It will not show dialog. That was the question.
Yes, thanks, Miroslav.
No problem.
We're all sorted on this.
Sorry.
We're all sorted on this side.
Yeah. I'm finished from my end. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you very much for attending this. Bye.